Here in America, in 1877, the frontier was moving west. Gold fever had gripped the country, and not so well known, so had dinosaur fever. Here in Wyoming and in neighboring Colorado, dinosaur bones were being found by the ton. And partner, there was money in them there bones. The discoveries ignited one of the bitterest, nastiest, orneriest feuds in the history of dinosaur excavation.
Opening up the West for gold prospectors and dinosaur hunters posed a problem for anyone seeking fame and fortune. The West was still Indian territory. While General Custer fought and died at the Little Bighorn, dinosaur hunters were at work, even as the battle raged near them. They crept around the perimeter of the battle to dig out the dinosaur remains before a rival could arrive on the scene. Hard on the heels of the early dinosaur hunters came railway workers. They too found giant bones in their thousands as the iron horse cut through the rocky terrain of the Midwest. Here at Como Bluff in Wyoming, paleontologists, or dinosaur detectives, still search for dinosaur bones. Each new find reveals more clues about dinosaurs and their lifestyle. Bob Backer, a modern dinosaur detective, has retraced the steps of the early pioneers. He's driven by that same spirit and thirst for knowledge that was born 100 years ago.
I think the secret is the spirit of the times. When the railroad was coming through here and the surveymen were coming through, there was the sense of this as the frontier, not just a political or an economic frontier, but this was a scientific frontier.
How did these old railroad men know that they were finding dinosaur bones, for heaven's sakes?
You know, they didn't. When they first found the giant bones here at Como, they thought the rocks were much younger than they really were. They thought they were in the age of mammals. And so they sent a telegram back to New Haven, to Yale, and they said, we have these giant bones, and we think they're for this huge giant ground sloth.
Two East Coast professors, Edward Drinker Cope and O.C. Marsh, both recognized the finds for what they were. The huge dinosaur bones dwarfed anything yet found. Both men had a passion for dinosaurs. Both were rich men who could pay handsomely to acquire them. They had started out as friends, but by the time of the dinosaur bonanza, both were bitter rivals. Each man used his money and driving ambition to outwit the other. It was just a feud until 1877, when Marsh acquired a staggering 30 tons of dinosaur. The bone wars had begun.
They let their discovery be known back east, but was there a rivalry and you say a gold rush?
Incredible one.
Was it really coming
Incredible
out
one. The two men, Professor Cope in Philadelphia, Professor Marsh in New Haven, both wanted the bones from here. Marsh got here first, and his men worked up and down Como Bluff and got, as I said, the easy bone, but they got a lot of good easy bone.
For both Cope and Marsh, it was a fight to the finish. Neither was willing to see good specimens fall into the hands of the other. They would rather destroy finds than see their rival get them. Stories still have it that each man ordered his henchmen to steal the finds of his rival, and what they could not steal, they smashed.
Cope hired two men to rustle a dinosaur, the Hubble brothers. They came over the cliff. When Marsh's men were at that end, Cope's rustlers came over that end. They got one dinosaur, but a good one. It's the big meat eater mounted to death in New York, the Allosaurus.
Well, was anybody killed in these Then these dinosaur wars?
No, I don't think any shots were fired in earnest, except in print.
Yeah.
If people could be sued for scientific libel, it would have happened.
By the end of the Bone Wars, Cope and Marsh had between them collected and named over 120 new species of dinosaur. At Como Bluff, small plant eaters like Dryosaurus and Leosaurus. Bigger ones like the plated Stegosaurus. And the giants Diplodocus and Apatosaurus. Then there were the meat eaters, Ceratosaurus and the giant Allosaurus, for whom no plant eater, however large, was safe. American dinosaurs were on the map. The dinosaur bonanza, fueled by Cope and Marsh, lasted for 12 frantic years and was made all the more intense because of the rarity of complete skeletons. Even today, the chances of a major skeleton being discovered are still slim. For a dinosaur to survive for millions of years requires a great slice of luck. As a geologist, Christine Turner understands those odds very well. For our benefit, she pretends to be a dinosaur and explains how it died, was buried, and finally resurfaced as a fossil today.
I used to be a dinosaur that roamed around the margins of the stream. But maybe I died by trying to cross the river. Maybe I died by a predator. Perhaps I died during a drought. But whatever happened, I got disarticulated. My bones fell apart, and I'm now a femur bone. Okay, now I'm a dinosaur bone. I was beached on this sandbar during a violent storm that carried the bone in a flash flood down the river and washed me up on the beach, and I landed up on the sandbar. Now with time, as the water receded and waned, the sand would just deposit right on top of me and bury me. After that, additional layers were deposited on top of me. And so I was eventually 8,000 feet below the surface. How did I get exhumed at the surface? Well, following all of this deposition, there was a period of uplift and mountain building. And as the river cut through the mountain and created the canyon, it cut through the same layer that the dinosaur bone was in and exposed that bone.
Dinosaur remains in just a few places still reveal a treasure trove. Some are so full of bones they've been left in place and had their own museum built around them.
Behind me, we see the surface of a 150-million-year-old sandbar, originally horizontal and now tilted up and dipping to the south. And strewn across the face of that sandbar are the remains of approximately 10 to 12 different species of dinosaurs. The most common dinosaurs here are brontosaurs, very large, long-necked, long-tailed herbivores. But there are two carnivorous dinosaurs known, the large meat-eater Allosaurus and the slightly smaller meat-eater Ceratosaurus.
These deposits, rich as they are only a glimpse into the long reign of the dinosaurs. Over a changing calendar, 150 million years long, species came and went. Reading the record is not easy for modern-day dinosaur hunters.
Well, how does each of the dinosaurs found here fit into the general worldwide picture?
That's a really neat question, and we got a graphic that'll illustrate that. Now, the way I look at it, the whole history of dinosaurs is like taking a movie through time. In a place like Como Bluff, you have layer after layer after layer, each with its own dinosaurs. It's like getting a burst of frames of motion picture of how the dinosaurs came, flourished, went extinct. Any one place in the world, you don't have the whole history of dinosaurs. In fact, you don't even have the whole history of one family of dinosaurs. You just have a little intense burst of documents and fossils.
How many millions of years are represented from the bottom there to the top of this thing?
Yeah, tough question. We don't yet have radioactive beds that can give us a nice hard number. But by comparing the fossils we get at the bottom of the section and the top, it's about 10 million years from where we're sitting to those black beds. So all of this history flourishing and extinction and turnover is played out over roughly, well, that'd be about 2 million dinosaur generations, 10 million chronological years.
Do you have in your mind's eye what it looked like around here at that time?
Before we started working here, the reconstruction was of a giant swamp, sort of like the Amazon basin or the Congo basin or a part of New Jersey I grew up in, just swamps and wet soil. But when we studied the fish, the only common fish were lungfish that could breathe air during the dry season. The turtles are all pretty small. If this were a giant swamp, there'd be huge turtles. And we found little lumps of rock, like that one, that were cemented with lime. And these lime lumps grow in the soil during the dry season. So now we know the classic picture is totally wrong. This wasn't a swamp. This was a giant, hot floodplain with a long dry season, maybe like Australia or Peninsula India today.
Today we know more about the world in which dinosaurs lived and the animals themselves. The giant plant-eater Diplodocus at 90 feet dwarfed the 30-foot predator Allosaurus. But the hunter would have to be cunning. One wrong move and the victim would live to see another day. Much of what we know about Diplodocus is the result of American philanthropy on the grand scale. Not long after the bone wars were over, another American millionaire became fascinated by dinosaurs. Andrew Carnegie, who made a fortune out of steel, read a story in the New York Journal of 1898. The headline said, "Biggest dinosaur ever found." Andrew Carnegie wanted it. He wanted it for his museum in Pittsburgh. And what Andrew Carnegie wanted, he usually got. He immediately dispatched a man with a check for $10,000 and the orders, "Buy it."
In 1895, Carnegie had made his fortune in railroads and steel, and he decided to give to Pittsburgh a palace of culture. And the palace had 4 columns. One was art, another was literature, another was music, and the 4th was science. And in 1898, science meant dinosaurs.
Carnegie's money bought him the best bone hunters of the day, but no amount of searching, it seemed, would unearth the skeleton he yearned for. 2 months later, his investment paid off. Carnegie's diggers struck lucky, very lucky.
What they found was this, a giant toe bone of a dinosaur sticking out of the rock. And they got very excited because when they started excavating the rock from around the toe bone, they found that the toe bones led to the ankle bones, and the ankle bones led to the shin bones of the dinosaur, and the shin bones led to the proverbial thigh bones of the dinosaur. It was the most perfect July 4th that any paleontologist has ever had, and Carnegie got exactly what he paid for, an 84-foot colossal dinosaur. It was named Star-Spangled Dinosaur because it was found on July 4th, Independence Day. The dinosaur Diplodocus became not only the toast of Pittsburgh and the toast of North America, it became the toast of the world. It became so wildly popular. A tavern song was written in honor of Diplodocus, which only had one verse, at least one verse that has survived, that went something like, "The crowned heads of Europe all make a royal fuss over Uncle Andy and his old Diplodocus." Uncle Andy must have loved it. He paid for it, and he got everything he paid for and more. Casts of Diplodocus carnegii were made for and installed in Paris, in Vienna, in Bologna, in Berlin, in Leningrad, in La Plata, in Mexico City, and Buenos Aires. That really set the stage for the popularity of dinosaurs and of the great studies on dinosaurs. Here was tangible evidence to all the people of Europe of the terrific dinosaur finds that were occurring in North America.
The huge bones of the giant dinosaurs inspired not only the museums. At the turn of the century, the motion picture, the cinema, was just coming into its own. And a young animator named Winsor McKay produced one of the very first animated pictures. It was called Gertie the Dinosaur. For the first time, showed the public what dinosaurs really were, moving, living creatures. And they gazed at them in awe and amazement. Something I'm going to do right now.
Come on out, Gertie, and make a pretty bow. Gertie, down her jumbo. Gertie will now show that she isn't afraid of me and will take me for a ride. Alley up.
Audiences everywhere were spellbound by Gertie the Dinosaur. But that was soon eclipsed when, in 1909, an even bigger giant came to light. A German expedition found in East Africa a dinosaur so big it could easily look over the top of a 4-story building. The skeleton was named Brachiosaurus. Brought back to Germany, it remains today the star of the Berlin Museum. The giant creature is a feat of mechanical engineering. Today, dinosaur detectives like David Norman still marvel at the size of the bones and how they were designed.
This was a real giant amongst dinosaurs. It was about 75 feet long. It probably weighed somewhere between 30 and 40 tons. And its head towered some 30 feet above the ground. It was a true giant. The foot has a rather remarkable design. It consists of these very long bones that are tied together. But instead of lying flat on the ground, as you expect in our feet, the bones are actually tied together vertically. And they're held together with bands of really powerful ligaments that ran from one to the other. On the end of this very tubular sort of foot are very short toes, very stubby toes, rather like that of an elephant. So what you've got here is a classically designed foot for bearing lots and lots of weight. And you need that sort of foot if you weigh 30 or 40 tons. You can see the way in which they supported their weight by looking back at the hind limb here. You have a beautiful vertical pillar, which is classically designed to bear an enormous amount of weight in these creatures. So all in all, for bearing their own weight, they have a fantastic design, which is ready-made for walking around on land. What about the neck? Because that really is spectacular. If you look at the simple design of the neck, then you've got beneath it a series of bony rods with muscles attached. So the best comparison that you can use for a neck of that type is really a crane, where the jib is formed by the skeleton itself, and then the hawsers are formed by the muscles and the tendons that actually operate the neck and move it from side to side or up and down in a very precise way. It's a very simple and rather elegant mechanical design. I mean, all in all, you've got a fantastic animal.
Brachiosaurus means arm lizard. It got its name because of the extraordinary length of its arms, up to 15 feet. These arms gave it a giraffe-like posture, ideal for reaching up into the trees where it would nip off vegetation using chisel-shaped teeth. Studies of the bone tell us that unlike modern reptiles, it grew fast, achieving its huge size in a few short years. Today, even bigger dinosaurs than the Berlin specimen are slowly being uncovered. The focus has shifted back to America. Here at the Dry Mesa Quarry in Colorado, the bones of the biggest dinosaurs ever are being found. Because of the sheer size of the bones, picks and shovels are no longer enough.
Well, that's something, Doug.
Been interesting.
Yeah, you bet. You know, on this bulldozer, we're sitting on top probably of the biggest jigsaw puzzle in the world. This site in Colorado contains the bones of the biggest animals ever to roam the planet. But to get those bones out of this hard rock takes a combination of brute force and surgical precision.
Ken, what's the process of getting bones out of this hard rock here?
First of all, we bring a dozer in and cut this overburden down, and we take it down as close as we dare to the top of the deposit. Well, we start with air tools. We have jackhammers, medium-sized jackhammers, small jackhammers, mainly just to move rock. But when we discover a bone, then we usually move to smaller tools like the awl and the hammer.
Those bones look like they've been varnished or lacquered or something.
They have. As we uncover them, we put shellac on them to help hold pieces in place and make the bone a little stronger until we can work around it and get it collected. These bones have been covered on top with the strips of burlap and plaster. They're now ready to cut loose and turn over so we can cover the underside. And then there'll be a completely wrapped package such as this one. This one's ready to be loaded on the truck and transported back to the university.
Dr. Wade Miller is the current director of the Earth Sciences Museum at Brigham Young University.
That's correct.
Doctor, how big did these things that are being found around here get to be?
The dinosaurs that are coming out of this quarry are, at least not all of them, but some of them larger than any that have been found elsewhere in the world. So that's why we're excited about this site. This one, which has been called Supersaur, is estimated maybe at a length of 120 to 130 feet, making it maybe 30-some feet larger than Diplodocus and proportionally larger all over. So it's a huge dinosaur. What we discovered with this one was that it was hollow inside. Now, that had never been found before. The opening would have been 2 or 3 times this in life. There are little pieces of bone that we found in there, and in other areas we found out that they were actually running vertically, showing that these were used as struts. That is, little pieces to support, much like corrugated cardboard, for the same reason, to have light weight and yet a maximum amount of strength. So again, in answer to your question, what the animal did was to have kind of an engineering marvel here of hollowing out the bone in areas that weren't known before.
So in other words, you can have fairly light bone structure and still have a heavy animal, as you
Right.
suggest, 50 tons or so. This is just another bit of evidence of the fact that paleontology is really a detective job.
It really is. It is. It's like
putting
being,
one clue to another and finally coming to a conclusion.
It is. It's exactly like being a detective. And I think that's what makes it so interesting, to be able to find these things and then predict other things and then find more evidence that either supports your prediction or does not, and then you go on to something else.
Jim Jensen has been doing exactly that. He thinks he's found a real winner, a whopper, even for dinosaurs.
That dig's not only fascinating, but the scenery is glorious down the valley.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Jim, how did you get involved in this whole thing of digging up dinosaur bones?
Well, it started when I was a small boy.
Maybe we can sit down over here.
Yeah, let's do.
After 60 years of searching, Dinosaur Jim's unconventional career has finally paid off.
My interest in fossils began when I was a little kid.
Jim is basically a self-tutored man. How in the world did you get recognition from the academic fraternity?
At Brigham Young University, I was curator of the geology department. But I wanted to establish a museum, but they wouldn't let me use the word museum. But I had stationery printed up anyway with the Earth Sciences Museum. I was curator of the Earth Sciences Museum, something that didn't exist. And after several years, I thought I might as well be director, so I promoted myself to director, had some new stationery printed up. Then I would conduct business with the director of the Natural History Museum in Paris. But then your fame doesn't come from sitting in the laboratory picking away at bone. It comes from what you find. In Montana, I found a big skull. I could barely reach the width of it, 6 feet wide and nearly 9 feet long. When I plastered it up, it weighed 1.5 tons, so it's out in the Badlands. So how do I get it out? Well, I worked as a longshoreman handling heavy things. I worked as a truck driver, and I knew how to stomp down fences, so there was no problem getting it out. I continued collecting material, and eventually amounted to a tremendous amount underneath the University Stadium, and I consider that one of my triumphs, is to get some of the athletic department space to put my bones in.
Jim Jensen's big find really is a whopping great dinosaur. He calls it Ultrasaurus, the ultimate in big dinosaurs.
But here, Walter, I'd like to show you something.
Oh, for heaven's sake. What's that?
Well, the New York Giants have never played in the stadium, but had they done so, this is something that might have been left behind.
I suspect you knew we were coming.
Yeah.
But seriously.
To assemble it upright, he needs the university's 60,000-seat stadium. So far, though, he's only found a leg and a shoulder blade. What the whole skeleton would do to the home team is anyone's guess.
What I can't figure out, Jim, is how you figured out what this model of a dinosaur leg should really look like.
This leg belongs to a dinosaur of a group that were plant eaters. They walked around on 4 legs, had a long neck, long tail, so we know the type of dinosaur it was.
So with that size, with the feet here on the 33-yard line, the tail would be back there somewhere around the 40-yard line of the opposition.
Although the dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago, you'd never know it at New York's biggest toy store. Here, dinosaurs are big business, generating millions of sales and enthralling kids of all ages. Candies, balloons, sweatshirts, you name it, somebody will stick a dinosaur on it.
He's killing it! Whoa!
Oh, you're gonna push him right off the cliff.
Whoa! And he's charging!
Oh, but he'll crush them all. He's too big, the T-Rex. That's the problem. That's why it was called Rex.
No, but it's
the king of the all.
leg. But it's 3 against 2.
You might think that you couldn't come up with anything new on dinosaurs. Well, one fellow did. He was a toy inventor, looking for something new for his own children's Christmas. So he asked them, and he came up with a moneymaker that has astounded the entire American toy industry.
In 1985, Jim Alley needed a winner. Toys were a cutthroat business. For him, gloom already had set in.
It was the day after Christmas, and my kids had just gotten all the robots they could ever stand. And I knew that I was looking for the next thing that would make kids really excited. And I thought, gee, what was the one theme that kids didn't have any toys to play with? And it came to me right away that my kids, and when I was a child, the same thing, everybody likes dinosaurs. And the kids really need something with dinosaur toys. And you just couldn't give a kid a couple of dinosaurs to play with. You had to give them a reason to play with the dinosaurs. So I came up with the idea of Dino Riders.
Great.
Now these guys are all in an exact scale to the dinosaur. So this is like, these are like 5'10", and this is how big the dinosaur
That's
was, really big.
He really would be. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And all the dinosaurs are like, they're all on scale to each other then, too.
Yes,
okay,
they are.
great.
Mm-hmm. That's a
I hope the good guys
typical.
have a weapon that's as good as the bad guys. It got us into the international scene. It was a big thing for us in the United States. We developed a TV show that went on the air around Dino Riders. We were the first toy company to sell a video cassette to promote a product category. It made us a big-time company. Kids love Dino Riders. It's a concept that has been able to be interpreted around the world because every kid has that fantasy about dinosaurs and that they were real, but they're kind of mystical and they're kind of scary, but they were big and real and really, truly exciting.
You've come a long way to die, youngster.
Looking for someone? Short breath?
I'll be back, youngster.
Dino Riders are here.
I look back at that and say, gee, I wish I could have another day after Christmas like that.
Well, movie moguls, too, found a way to make money out of dinosaurs. Countless films from King Kong to Fantasia fired imaginations around the globe. Mostly, it was the aggressive flesh eaters that were used to terrify the audiences, frequently in pursuit of buxom young ladies. The fact that the dinosaurs disappeared from Earth 64 million years before we appeared wasn't allowed to get in the way of a good story.
I'd like you to meet the family. Here are two members.
Ray Harryhausen is the grand old man of special effects, especially dinosaurs.
Here's the Allosaurus and the pterodactyl that carried Miss Welsh away. You take the basis of a real Allosaurus and you glamorize it like you would a movie star, like the eyebrows to cast shadows and sort of a demonic-looking expression on its face. And you give it a good mouthful of teeth, of course. The way you animate it dictates whether he's a villain or a hero. When you see him on the screen, 40 feet high, with a little figure of a real person next to him, I think you'll find that you wouldn't like to stay around while he examines you as a morsel. Dinosaurs, by their very appearance, are dynamic creatures. You have to write the story around it to make use of them in the way that man sees them. We're not making a film for professors because they usually don't go to see these type of films. And we're making a film to entertain the public. So certain liberties are taken. But basically, the whole principle is to get them as accurate as possible.
Did you see that?
If dinosaurs were so immense and so heavy, how in the world did they move around? Well, the dinosaur detectives are still finding out. The secret lies in their bones. Huge, yes, but they were well-designed marvels of the animal kingdom. Despite its length of 90 feet, Diplodocus moved smoothly and efficiently over the ground. It swung its long, straight, pillar-like legs in an easy stride. The neck and tail, held by powerful tendons running the length of its spine, added poise to the body as it moved. The clues were confirmed when, in 1980, dinosaur detectives began looking again at another detective trail neglected for 30 years. In Colorado, huge footprints, dinosaur trackways, caught Martin Lockley's eye. At this spot, the footprints left on a muddy plain by a passing herd of huge dinosaurs were frozen in time. The mud baked hard in the sun and later turned to stone. And millions of years later, the footprints were exposed in the bed of a river. Lockley is convinced that the tracks provide clues to how the dinosaurs moved in life.
Well, what we have right all around us here are a series of brontosaur trackways going parallel. These 5 animals were going in this direction as a group. These are the big back feet here, and these are the little front feet. And there's at least 5 animals about the same size, group of sub-adults that were moving together almost certainly as a herd. This is the very large back footprint of the brontosaur, and this is the small, almost hoof-shaped front footprint. And as they walked along, Here's the front footprint, foot goes down, and the big back foot comes up behind it and almost oversteps it, marks the back end of the front footprint. There's at least two different ways that a four-footed animal can walk. One is that it can move its alternate feet, that's front left and back right here, like this, and then like this, and then like this, and then like this. Another way that they can walk is to move both feet on one side, like this. So they move like that, and like that, and like that, and like that, and so forth. Certainly, I think that the large animals like the hippo and the rhino and the elephant make fairly good comparison with large four-footed dinosaurs like the brontosaur or the triceratops.
The wealth of new evidence dinosaur detectives have discovered about the movements of these huge beasts is eagerly sought by others. Professional sculptors and artists have done their own investigations. Recreating full-size dinosaurs has turned Dave Thomas into something of a sleuth.
Basically, the problem is that you can't actually see the animal you're sculpting. Well, the first thing you have to do is your research, study the animal, and the first thing I did on these big bipedal ones was basically by reading tracks and then by putting the skeleton into those tracks and trying to see how it moved there. The first thing I found was that the dinosaur balances here at the hip joint with the tail balancing the front part, but he also uses the tail to balance left and right, and so that the tail, the long tail there, is a tremendous lever, balance lever, just like a wire walker's pole. I wanted to make it as far forward in the stride as I could. With the right foot down, of course, the tail is off on the left. And I was afraid that I had the tail too far over, in which case it would have fallen this way. But I trusted my instincts. We put all the pieces together, welded it, we picked it up with the crane and set it on its feet. The crane lines went slack and it stood, and I knew I'd gotten it right.
We don't find dinosaurs like this in the field. They don't come ready mounted. And so it becomes a problem sometimes to know how these things actually were put together. You can see the way he's menacing me, that he's interested in eating meat. He's got these big sharp teeth and they've got serrations on them. He's a meat eater. Now meat eaters need to run after their dinner. He's got these nice long back legs and the skeleton is balanced by virtue of that long tail. It's a racier looking animal. This is like a greyhound in comparison with an old cow. So if I was laying bets on this chap and this chap for acceleration, I'd give it to this guy every time. This one will be first away from the lights.
But for dinosaur detectives, working out just how fast the dinosaur moved is no game of chance. By piecing together the clues from the bones and tracks in Texas, Jim Farlow can calculate the speed of one particular dinosaur 130 million years ago.
Some of the most interesting information you can get from dinosaur trackways comes not from the individual footprints themselves, but from the spacing from one footprint to the next. One can estimate how fast a dinosaur was going from the length of the footprint as translated into the leg length and the length of the stride. Now, in a dinosaur that's walking, no particular hurry, just doing whatever dinosaurs do normally, the stride length is generally around 5 to 7 times the length of the individual footprints. In the case of the dinosaurs from the site in West Texas, where the stride length was 15 to 20 times the footprint length, one can estimate that they might have been running at speeds of as much as 25 miles per hour, which is pretty respectable by anybody's standards.
Jim Farlow believes that speeds like that have direct comparisons with the animals of today. The emu is a fast-running bird, and it leaves a footprint just like the tracks found in Texas.
Well, we're interested in animals like the emu here because the emu is the largest living flightless bird. It sometimes seems to me in some artists' reconstructions of dinosaurs, they almost make their faces too mammal-like. Whereas if you look at the face of a lizard or a crocodile or an emu, there's something alien about it, something very unmammal-like. And so when I look at this fella's face, I just can't help but sort of see through the feathers and almost think that I'm looking in the face of a dinosaur. I expect they had that sort of, that harshness, that glassy look to them. It's hard to put into words exactly what I'm seeing, but I almost seem to feel that I've got an insight into the psychology of a dinosaur from looking at the face of a bird like this.
To imagine fast-moving dinosaurs, we need direct comparisons like that. While the dinosaur detectives provide the clues, artists who work with them use their visual imagination to flesh out dinosaurs in action.
We sit at a table, the whole set of people at the paleontology department, and discuss these animals and what we think they do and what Dale thinks and how he feels about that animal. And I've got to just get that feeling of what he pictures this creature to be.
We had to begin with the beginnings, but see, I had the understanding that Miss Kish used to work with living models, and most of them are human beings of one kind or another, and so we had to work from the bones back out again.
And I could put a pin in and feel where it is and say, is that as thick as you think it should be? And we work like this. And he eventually comes up with how he wants his position, and then I start sculpturing the bones in this particular position. And from that point on, it's how those muscles attach on the bones, from here to there, this to that, and how fat those muscles are, how strong it has to be to hold up that big head, etc.
Three years ago, the bones of Carnotaurus, meat-eating bull, because of its bull-like horns and predatory habit, were found in South America. At 36 feet long and 2 tons in weight, the excitement for artist Stephen Zirkus was that with it, they found perfectly preserved imprints of its skin. It was for Zirkus the find of a lifetime.
Here we have a very unique situation where instead of restoring an animal that we have no idea what it externally would look like, not only were the bones found, but the actual skin impressions were found in patches from throughout the entire body, from the skull all the way onto the tail. One of the most exciting discoveries with the skin is that we found portions of skin on the skull as well as on portions of the body. This is the first time that we've ever had any skin actually preserved, revealing what the face of a dinosaur might look like. The skin impressions of Carnotaurus on the face as well as the rest of the body, it indicates that Carnotaurus, like other dinosaurs, had reptilian skin, scaly. In other words, it did not sweat.
And it didn't take long for the mass of new evidence, so painstakingly built up by dinosaur detectives, to reach a more commercial market. Dinosaurs have been repackaged. In museums, bones are being fleshed out. These touring dinosaur exhibitions pull in big crowds and big profits for both the museums and their commercial partners.
It's changed dramatically, hasn't it? This idea came to me in about 1982, mid-82. We tried to convince the museum directors that this would be a good idea to have animated dinosaurs in their museums. And it took about 2 years to convince them that that was indeed the case. From that point on, then they really took off. The popularity was just enormous. We broke record crowds in just about every museum we've been into. Museums worldwide now have them. We're throughout Europe, Australia. We're going to the Far East, all over the United States and Canada, and they're attracting record crowds.
How difficult was it to animate these figures?
That was the first step, Walter, to make sure that I had the exact input on how these creatures looked. And from that point, then, it was a matter of getting electronic technicians on board, sculptors and artists, because the sculptors make these things come to life.
The sad thing in one respect, though, is that the amount of commercialization that can occur around the subject of dinosaurs is a bit like a double-edged sword. In some respects, the commercial aspects of it are exciting because they draw people in and create a lot of interest and excitement. But in another way, there's also always the danger that the interest, the real science, can be trivialized. That in the end, the theme park manager or the store manager won't be so interested in the science, he'll be more interested in the terrifying image that the customers want to see. So never mind the details, let's just create the image. And that would really sell science down the river. In these days, when funds are very tight and very restricted, especially in university and museum research, that we actually need more support, perhaps from the commercial side, in order to foster the sort of research, the new discoveries that are so vital to make the subject that I work in so vibrant and so healthy as it has been in the past.
Under this university football stadium lie 100 tons of dinosaur bones. They've been gathering dust since 1962. Starved of funds, dinosaur detectives can't unlock the secrets of bones dug up 30 years ago.
How serious is the restriction of funds today, and what's it costing us in lack of information we might be getting otherwise?
Well, paleontology, digging dinosaurs, is incredibly cheap science. It really is. You don't need $1.6 billion per brontosaur. And although it's pure science, it certainly brings enormous enjoyment to millions and millions of people. I can't think of many other topics other than dinosaurs that cut across every age and class boundary. People love to think about dinosaurs. There isn't enough funding for that type of science, science that it just does a lot of good for the human brain. It used to be private individuals that funded digs. Andrew Carnegie spent a couple $100,000 to get a wonderful diplodocus out there about 6 miles on Sheep Creek. And Marsh's men and Cope's men came from private funds.
What is there out there still to learn that would hurt us not to know?
Well, my father used to ask me that question. He said, why do people pay money to support paleontology? And I thought a bit. My father's a musician. And I said, Dad, where do more people go in Washington, D.C.? The National Symphony, with its wonderful symphony, or the National Museum with its dinosaurs? And he thought and said, well, a lot more people go to see the dinosaurs. There's just something wonderful, exciting, beautiful about the history of life. To really appreciate where we are today, the animals and the plants, you got to know where they've come from. That long, complex history, evolution and extinction, dinosaurs, mammals, turtles. And that gives us a profound sense of where we belong.
America used its wealth and enthusiasm to put dinosaurs in center field for all the world to see. But the vision was of dull, lumbering creatures who did little but sleep and eat. And then out of China came the first fossilized dinosaur egg, and that led to a revolution. The idea that dinosaurs might have lived in family groups. And then more eggs were discovered, and the possibility that dinosaurs were loving, caring, intelligent creatures changed forever our view of dinosaurs and the world in which they live.